There are many good mech games out there. The Lancer RPG is one of my favorites. It is a truly addictive level of customization that will leave you up for hours and hours and hours just looking at builds and options. It's also pretty easy to prep for. The combat system is finely tuned for creating compelling encounters that keep you thinking all fight. There is one unexpected problem with Lancer I see brought up a lot though. Not with the system is great. Yeah, it's got a learning curve, but so does every game. There are lots of good videos and guides online for talking about how to get into the actual game part. The real big problem is actually running the game. See, Lancer is a pretty big mechanics-rich system, and while virtual tabletops like Roll20 can handle some of it, Roll20's limitations mean you can only do so much. You can use other programs to help mitigate some of the difficulties, but having to bounce back and forth between multiple instances of web browsers while playing can be a bit rough. So instead, let's look at a better way. Maybe not initially an easier one, but hopefully this video will make it that way. Let me show you how to run Lancer in FoundryVTT. Foundry is Roll20's competitor, and it has a lot more power behind it, but the complexity comes with a lot more to learn and manage. If you already know generally how Foundry works, feel free to skip to the next section. This is going to be some pretty rudimentary stuff. First, really easy part, you can go to the FoundryVTT website, make an account, and buy FoundryVTT for $50. Big thing about this price point is it's a one-time purchase. Once you have a Foundry license, you own it for life and can host it for your friends without them owning it. This price is $10 shorter than a year subscription to Roll20 for context. This lets you essentially use the program from free from here on if you want to play a direct connection, but then you'll have to start using port forwarding. Port forwarding has a bad reputation for headaches and frustration, and it definitely can be that. It's essentially just opening ports on your network so that you can let your friends get in. Foundry has a pretty good breakdown on its website of what you need to do to set this up and test if it's working correctly. I'll put those in the description. Everyone's setup, router, and internet situation is different, so it's best to go check at the source and then look up questions on the forums based off what problems you're having. Alternatively, if you like Roll20's simple web browser approach and don't mind the subscriptions, Foundry has a number of hosting services that take care of all that for you. The Forge is the most common one. It essentially matches the Roll20 price point while having slightly more customizable features and payment options. Doesn't have the same appeal as one-time purchase, but if you spend more than one day ripping your hair out, go give it a shot. I'll continue explaining using FoundryVTT, but everything is transferable to Forge, so whichever you choose, it's all about the same. Anyways, you opened up FoundryVTT. First thing you'll want to do is go to Game Systems. Type in Lancer, and then install. You have now installed Lancer. Congratulations. You can go to Game Worlds after that and create world. You'll see options to set a name, where you want to store that data for that game. For people on Forge, the Forge site hosts a digital folder structure you upload your assets into, but otherwise it looks exactly the same. Then you just click through, you'll see the login menu, where you and your players pick which player you're logging into. Select Game Master, and congratulations, you've got a game in Foundry. From here, you'll see a lot. Let's start on the right bar. Your game will default to the chat bar. You can type messages in here, but this is also where roles are shown and abilities get posted when used. The first two posts in your game contain an extensive guide to the program, and it also has the links you'll need for inviting friends if you're port forwarding. Foundry has a ton of nice guides for each individual bar if you need more details, but we'll still go through things in brief. In order, you have the chat bar, initiative tracker to track whose turn it is in combat, the scene tab, which is how you make all your maps, the actors tab, which is how your players make their PCs and mechs and how you make your NPCs, the items tab, if you need to make any specific systems or items to share with players, the journal tab, for journaling, GM notes, or making in-universe logs and reports, the rollable tables for rollable tables, card stacks tabs, which you don't really need to worry about unless you're playing, Dead Lancer, and there's a playlist tab for music and sound effects that you can play with your friends, Compendium tab, which is very useful for having all the mechs, items, status effects, and otherwise ready to drag and drop. I highly recommend using the Lancer macros that come in here. They let you pre-place different AoE templates, and they also give you access to a number of niche actions and macros for things that can be tricky otherwise. Seriously, this scan macro is a lifesaver, but we'll get back to macros later though. Finally, the game setting bar. This is where you can tweak general game settings and manage any modules or content you install. Game settings have just about anything you could want to change in here, including UI colors, and if cameras will pan to a player's token when they talk in chat, or player permissions to upload and navigate scenes, and so on. I suggest leaving most of these settings default to start. You'll want to go into your user management tab though and at least add some more profiles. These are like accounts that you and your players log into before playing. You can change the permissions to different presets for assisting GMs, players you trust to look at internal files or upload things, and you can even set passwords if your playgroup is not to be trusted. Now then, let's go back to the scene tab and make a map. We're just going to go for a blank one for now, so that I can actually show off how the tabs on the left side of the screen work. From top down, you've got your token controls that let you actually move your characters, and also a ruler that lets you measure between hexes. You have a measuring tool to place different templates manually, tile tool which lets you place objects, assets, and a whole lot of other things, a drawing tool that lets your players scribble on all the nice maps you made, a wall tool that lets you place line of sight and movement blocking lines on your maps, lots of customizable features with these. A light layer with some very good features, also can work in tandem with walls for cinematic lighting, ambient sound effects that you can play when your players are near them for those good crackling fires, a journal tab which lets you take notes on the map and then tie them to journals, and if you're using Foundry 12 and onward, there will be one additional tab that lets you set scene regions. These let you create event triggers when characters walk over certain parts of the map, along with some other function. Finally, there's that bar at the bottom. That's a hotbar for any macros or abilities you want to put in. If you're like me and had an MMO forcefully carve neurological problems into your brain during your youth, you'll love this. And yeah, very, very brief understanding. You'll find a ton more detail in each tab about what it does, and the guides are extensive. This at least gives you an idea of what I'll be talking about when I bring these same tabs up throughout the video. It's a lot to memorize, I know, but don't worry, because we're about to make you memorize even more, because now it's time for... CompCon is the largest online companion site for Lancer RPG. You're probably already familiar with it, but if not, you can find it at compcon.app, and it's got just about everything you'll need to check up on rules and for your players to build. You should use it. Go get lost in the compendium looking at mech parts for hours, it's great. More importantly for our purposes though, CompCon lets you build characters and easily import them to Foundry. You just make an account, it's free, no extra cost needed, make a pilot, and then go to them in the pilot roster. On the bottom, there will be this little button that's 3 dots surrounded by these curly brackets. Click on that, generate a share code, and there you go. The character and any frames tied to them will be transferable to Foundry via that code. Back in Foundry, just go to the Actors tab, create an actor with the type Pilot, and then generate an empty character sheet. You'll see all sorts of tabs here, but you'll want to go to the leftmost one that says Sync. Put in the code, click Download, and there you go. All the other tabs will auto-generate from the CompCon data. This way, you can have your players fill everything out on their own and just send over their codes. You can re-download the sheet when they make updates, but codes can time out and it's been finicky for me before, so if you have any problems, just have the player generate and send you a new code, and that generally fixes any problem. CompCon and Foundry come with all the base Lancer player mechs for free. If you want the NPC profiles, though, it requires purchasing the core rules. Similarly, if you want to use any third-party content or any of the expansions, you'll need to plug those in as well. You do this using a specific file type made for CompCon called LCP. You can get the LCP off the itch.io page with your purchase, and if you happen to have a physical version of the book, you can scan a QR code from it to get the LCP that way. How do you install these LCPs when you have them, though? Well, for CompCon, after you've logged in, you go to the Content Manager. You'll be able to see an LCP directory that has download links for all the core content and a nice selection of third-party LCPs made by other publishers or independents. Once you have that LCP, you can go to the Install Content tab, find your LCP in your downloads, and then upload it. Then you'll be able to see any LCPs you have downloaded on the Content Packs page. Similarly, in Foundry, you can go to the Lancer Compendium Manager in the Compendium tab to do the exact same process there. It is entirely possible, if you don't want to hassle with CompCon, to go plug in everything yourself manually into Foundry by just dragging and dropping from the Compendium. In fact, that's usually how I build my NPCs for sessions. But CompCon is convenient, and more importantly, it lets your players help you by giving them the ability to build on their own and just give you a code later. I prefer to use it for prep, but once I'm in FoundryVTT, I generally like to stay in Foundry and not have to tab out to look at it. Luckily, FoundryVTT presents all its information and character sheets very nicely on its own. Foundry has about all the same conveniences as CompCon, and that's all made possible by macros. The UI and all the pre-built macros in Foundry will save you a lot of time and trouble while playing Lancer. Let's see what John Lancer over here can do against some of these Assault NPCs. In every character sheet, you'll get all your standard macros. Macros for repairs, taking structure and overheating, along with standard basic attacks and tech attacks. Every weapon and system in your character sheet, however, also has buttons you can press to make attacks or that you can drag down to your macro bar in order to click with the numbers on your keyboard. This means it's entirely possible to drag all of your attacks to your macro bar and minimize how much you need your character sheet open in the first place. When you want to attack someone, you just left click on their mech, hover over anyone you want to target, and press T to target them. You can hold shift and press T again to select additional targets. Then, if we just click our macro button, you get a menu screen that pops up. This will guide you through the entire attack process. It lets you add modifiers from weapons and systems, and it'll also let you add on things like cover or other modifiers right into this. You just click through, plugging in any situational modifiers, and then click, and the attacks resolve against your enemy's evasion automatically, so long as you remembered to press T. Then you can roll damage and it'll account for who you hit and if you crit them or not. You can also retroactively change if you hit a target or not in the damage tab if you forgot to account for an extra bit of accuracy that would have brought you to a hit. Then, after inputting any additional damage details, it gives you your final numbers. Beyond attacks, if we go to the core modules section in the compendium, you can drag and drop the scan macro onto your GM toolbar from a list of preset Lancer macros. Then, if you click T on an enemy and click the macro whenever your players use the scan action, it'll print out a stat sheet in chat with minimizable windows for systems and weapons to give your players all the info on a neat little chat box card. Scan can honestly be cumbersome in both physical and digital Lancer games, so having an easy macro makes the process of using online at least so much easier and less of a hassle. Using this method, you can also see if the scan stays updated between its uses when I go and upgrade the health of the assault with the warpike damage we rolled earlier. This is the core of what makes FoundryVTT so useful for Lancer. It gives more time to thinking about the fight and less time to counting numbers and stacking modifiers. But with a few modules, we can go even further. Going back to the module page, you can download a module called Bar Brawl. Download it, go back into your game, and then go to Manage Modules in your game settings to turn it on. What this module will do is populate your token with little hotbars that will show their structure, heat, and health per mech. But first, we need to get it set up for Lancer specifically. You can find the Lancer Bar Brawl configurations on Kunemaku's GitHub, and it has a number of presets to choose from. Once you find one you like, click on it, then it'll bring you back to the source code. Just copy the whole code, go back into Foundry, and click on an empty slot in your macro bar. It will bring up a new macro, and the nice part of Foundry is that you can basically put anything in there. All we have to do is set this little bar to script, paste the code from the Lancer Bar Brawl config of your choice, and then run the macro, and there you go. Now, you can quickly right-click on any token to quickly access its health, change it exactly, add minus damage to take away health, adjust heat values, etc. If you take away enough health to go to 0, then the Lancer system in Foundry will automatically take away structure and do a structure roll for you, same for overheating. There are a number of quality life modules like this, and you can find most of them by looking up Lancer on the Add-ons module tab in your Foundry. And if you can't find something in the Add-on tab, you can always find them online and copy them in manually to your Foundry using the manifest link at the bottom. In fact, I'm just going to rapid shoot out some great Lancer modules and what they do to get you started. Token Action HUD Lancer gives you a little separate heads-up display if you don't want to mess with the macro bar. Just install it and its dependencies and you've got a nice redundant movable hotbar. It also lets you do things like make different skill checks, post abilities, start and end your turn, and even apply status effects to your mech. If you do like the macro bar, then Token Hotbar lets you set individual hotbars for specific characters and NPCs, so when you click them, you can have a preset group of macros. Token Action HUD Lancer is probably better, but this can help if you got specific visual effects, chat macros, or other things not represented by that module you want per NPC. You can go into the settings and configure it to only apply to Game Master, and I'd honestly suggest you do that or else your players might be confused on what's happening to their macro bars. I'd also pick up Drag Ruler. It lets you see how many spaces you're moving when you drag your icons so you don't have to switch tools. I suggest downloading it with Lancer drag ruler integration to make it work with the system better. And for more general ones, DF Architect and DF Template Enhancement are great for building maps and objects and making tools like lighting and walls more precise and easy to move. Trust me, you'll never want to place a light in Base Foundry again after doing it with these. Dice So Nice will give you shiny 3D dice to watch clank on the screen. Ernie's Modern UI is a very nice minimalist UI for Lancer if you want an alternative. And Drag Upload will, like it says, let you just drag something from an external folder onto the screen as a generic asset. Great if you need to place something you forgot about. Combine all this prep together and you've got by far the easiest way to play Lancer. So far, everything I've talked about has been strictly practical though. You could run a standard game from this point on and just use your imagination and have a great time with it. But why stop there? You saw that B-roll at the start. This is mech fighting action. Making the game easy to play is fine, but the most important part of any mecha is making it cool. Alright, before we even get into the tools Foundry has, you're going to need to get some assets. Luckily, the Lancer community is pretty open to sharing. Retrograde Minis provides standard minis for use in Foundry, but if you go to their website, you can customize, kitbash, and make just about any combination you want. You can unlock even more with a Patreon subscription, but for the most part, all the base Lancer mechs are free to print with their core paint schemes for your players. The PilotNet Discord is a channel for community resources, and you can find a ton of stuff in there. I'll also include a good asset collection in the description, but if that link expires, you really can't go wrong with a quick search. And if it's your home game, your friends aren't going to judge you for ripping something from your favorite mecha. Unless they do. Anyways, after you grab something, it's pretty simple to add it in. You can add and upload any asset from your computer onto this file manager screen. If you're using the Forge, you'll have a digitally backed up asset library, but it's all the same screen for our uses. As for the hex grid, I get a lot of questions from people who struggle with them. I'm going to try to go through the most common ones I hear. If a map is made for a Lancer like this one, it's easy enough to plug in the map at 100 pixel per hex and go from there. If you're using maps that were made for people-sized TTRPGs, however, you're probably going to want to make the hexagon pixel size 200. Reason being that a size 1 Lancer mech is going to be closer to a 2x2 or 3x3 square icon for another TTRPG. Most high-quality TTRPG maps I find have resolutions scaled in increments of 100 per space. So a 40 square by 40 square map would be 4000 by 4000 pixels, for example. This also means a cyberpunk map scaled at 40 by 40 will only be a 20 by 20 for mech combats after you scale up your hexes. Just keep that in mind when you're out looking for maps or making your own. The real unique trouble with hexagon maps is it's way harder to space them correctly. If you have a pre-made map like from Solstice Reign here with these nice markings for cover and objectives, or any map with a preset grid that you can't take off, it's going to be really hard to sync those up. Different programs measure hexes different, so if it's a popular hex map program and you're making the map yourself, you can usually look up what hex sizes you need for Foundry. And if it's a map for a Lancer module, places like Reddit and PilotNet will generally have listed dimensions to make it fit snugly. If it's something less official, you're probably just going to have to eyeball it. If you have to do that, then start by making your grid something bright so your eyes don't cross, then you can use this little grid configuration tool. Flip through the grid types until you see something that matches with what's on the map. In this case, it's auto-ranged columns. Then you can mouse wheel with Shift and Alt to adjust the map size and grid size until you got something that looks close. I generally go back and forth until the top and bottom of a column grid or the left and right sides of a row grid are aligned. Then you can finish most of the rest with a grid offset setting. Just keep changing it by tens until it's close, then start ticking up a couple pixels at a time. It may not end up being exactly correct, but it'll be close enough to play, and that's what matters. Once I've got the grid settled, I use these grid assets on my maps on the overlay layer to show cover and other information. I like doing this instead of hard baking a grid into my map. It's easier than fiddling with a grid configuration tool later. But you can still use them for that too. You can just open up an image editor, place them in, and then figure it out later. Alright, you've got a cool map, you've made some cool mechs, what else? Foundry's inbuilt lighting is really good and easy. You can just drag the lights in the bright areas and it adds a lot of contrast to maps that make everything look better. You can adjust that lighting, add colors, change intensities, and even go into the advanced settings to mess with how that light gradient looks and what blending mode the light uses. You can put down walls to affect that lighting too. If you do this, make sure you're using the right walls though. Ethereal walls will block light and let you move through them, but standard walls can block movement, and that can accidentally mess with your players moving their tokens, especially on a hex grid. You should set a scene's darkness level a little bit past 0 to make the darker areas stand out more compared to the lights you're putting down. I usually start at 0.4 for dark settings and adjust up and down from there depending on the time of the day or how dark the setting is. Also, turn off token vision for your maps if it's on by default. This means your players will be able to see the full map without needing to set up vision and line of sight on each of their tokens. Lancer is designed with players knowing the general position of everything, even invisible enemies, so you don't really need to hide or block vision unless you're doing something a little homebrew like a special encounter or a mech horror.
Oh.
Maybe don't start with this though. You can spend a long time really tweaking maps with those tools. There's some stuff you can do with lighting that can transform a flat map into a real cinematic scene. Beyond base Foundry though, there's even more you can do with just a few modules. For example, Lancer weapon effects. Just go to the mod menu, download Lancer weapon effects and its dependents, and every base weapon in Lancer or any official LCP will suddenly have a cool weapon visual and sound associated with them. This stuff is like magic, and it transforms the feel of the game a lot. Lancer Combat Banner gets you a cool Your Turn pop-up for players and NPCs. Lancer Communicator lets you make these codec call type messages for briefings or special events. I also like to use the Narrator Tools module for pop-up messages with a similar purpose. FX Master is great if you want to overlay some visual effects over the maps and icons, like rain, embers, or snow. Doing it this way means you can use these animated effects without clogging the object layer, along with tweak the exact amount of effect you want. Token Magic FX gives you a compendium full of effects that you can apply to tokens with macros, great for energy fields, shields, and Horus. There's even more out there. Foundry's modules really open up an endless amount of possibilities, and it's where so much of the meat of the VTT comes from. For example, this landing screen is made entirely in Foundry, and it's only really using 3 modules. I used Monk's active tile triggers to create tiles that can be clicked on to navigate scenes, play sounds, and open journal. Tile Scroll, which makes the background image move, and Forian's Quest Log, which adds a little quest menu that pops up when you click the mailbox. Once you go down this rabbit hole, it's really hard to stop. There are things you can do with the scripting in Foundry that borders on just making a video game, but I hope you can understand that much is a bit out of the scope of this video. Think of this as a starter pack, and from there you can really just make whatever you want. It's something to pull up on the side while you set up your first game and just follow the directions and then figure it out from there. If you think of a feature that'd be nice to have, chances are someone else did too and made a module for it. That's about it. Obviously there's more, but that gets into minutia that would make this video too long for an introduction, so go check out the GitHub comments and guides for the mods you get. Dig around a little, experiment. That's the most fun part of FoundryVTT. And hey, to get real for a second, it takes a surprising amount of work to both run a tabletop game that isn't the big one and run a game that isn't on Roll20. Doing both is good for tabletop games as a whole, and I think if you keep at it, you'll have all the tools to make a great game that's truly special for your players. And if things get rough or hard, never forget. Never run D&D. If I see you running 5th edition again, I will mail a Manticore to your house. Hey, thanks for watching again. I hope it helped. If you want to see more examples of the kind of stuff Foundry can do, go check out No Home in Twilight. Go steal from it. Do your dark deeds and tell your players it's all original, I don't mind. And if you're going to Gen Con, I'm doing a panel and premiere of a new show called Decolonized Dungeon. Go check it out, or come back in August to watch it then. Thanks to all the patrons for sticking through the quiet months. See ya.